Welcome back to the Wine Tech Insiders podcast. Today, we're talking about the technology that we use to run our companies, to make them more productive, to make them work better, technologies that might be interesting for you. Today, our insiders are back. We have Laurie from Oushinery.
Hi, everyone.
Seb from Troly.
Good morning.
And Jonathan from Bottlebooks.
Good evening.
Laurie, let's start with you. You have to tell us about one piece of technology that you use that you're excited about on your team.
Well, one thing I would like to point out, besides being the only woman on this podcast here, I'm also happen to be the only one that doesn't know how to code. So I think take technology on not on really what it can do for me. So really one thing that I love technology for is the busy work, like everything that's repetitive, everything that's just can be done better when it's not done by me or any of my team member. So the first thing that comes to mind for me, and it's so simple, and I'm sure like the panelists are gonna roll their eyes, but we love at Oushinery Text Expander. And Text Expander is a little app widget that you put on your computer, and it allows you with a couple of like really quick commands, like typing, to just deploy already pre-recorded. It can be email, but what is great, it also works across any app. So for example, if you are talking to us on our chat, we have a chat tool, Drift, for example, in our website, that would be the same. A question about pricing can be answered the same way by email or in the chat bot, but having this text expander app at a higher level allows us to just write once the script and have it work across anything we use. And then it has a couple of like smart things, such like it knows today's date, it knows the person's name. And it also is great, honestly, for onboarding a new customer success people, because they get a sense of not only like the answer, but the language we use to answer. Like, even though we talk to, we are business to business, B2B, we pride ourselves in being as much as possible like delightful and, human-centric, which sometimes is a bit, of a learning curve when we onboard new people. So that also helps them get the right tone of voice and also not lose their mind. So that's Text Expander, super simple. You don't need to be a techie to use it, and saves hours, and not just like time. It also saves, I think, sanity. Like, I should ask Becca when I finish this recording, but it's just like, then you don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel ever again.
I've never used it. I've never heard of it.
No.
I'm going to check it out for sure. Laurie, just one question. I'm completely digressing from the core topic here, but you mentioned, besides for the fact that you're the only woman and you don't code, you mentioned that you do have a slide technology kind of I wouldn't say a version, but you're not as tech prone as us guys coding, right? The question is, how do you, with your team, and I'm kind of putting myself in the shoes of a producer, small wineries here, and how do you, like, I'm sure you've got people on your team coming up with, oh, there's this new app, oh, there's this new thing, oh, I've been using that, oh, I've been using this. As a small business, how do you adopt versus push back on those technologies from your team? Yeah,
great question. Definitely that comes up. I'm also sometimes, I may not be techie, but I'm a bit of a geek, so I'm also keeping an eye on that. Honestly, we use, okay, I'm going to throw another app here. We use Asana for project management, and I know Seb, you use it as well, and I don't know if the folks at Bottlebooks use it too. So we have like, okay, perfect. So Asana all the way. There's other ones, like other project managements, but out there. So in Asana, we have overall project within this that's like, tech learning and tech consideration. And when somebody considers like a new, piece of technology or submits it, like we just kind of create a project like, hey, here is this new app that sounds interesting, or here is the latest development on that app. And then we just kind of like, we try to go like pretty fast, but like without going totally like, cost analysis and like we really try to evaluate, and as much as possible, if we add something, I'm going to almost like force on the team, then what do we retire? Like to try to keep that tech stack lean and not, I think the worst part sometimes with technology is having services that keep superimposing, that can do like the same things, but different, like, yeah. So yeah, like with like submission, I don't have like all the answers because, you know, I have more developers on my team that can help, but at the end of the day, I'm not the
That's
only one
interesting,
forcing
yeah.
the technology. Like we
Yeah.
kind of like quickly submit and review, and also look at the cost and, you know, what it can do. At the end of the day, though, my rule of thumb is more often than not, technology is always cheaper than human labor. You know, like it's just like, that's kind of like, you know, even like, oh, it only saves me like 2 hours a week or something. 2 hours a week in a year is a lot of money. This $150 app, worth it. You know, like, so just sometimes like reminding, yeah.
And do you find that this saving, this 2 hours a week, comes at a onboarding / friction cost? So the more apps, the more tech you've got, the more all of your team has to be across different things. And when you have someone new, it's 6, 7 new things as opposed to one new thing.
Well, what we tried, one of the big considerations when we adopt new tech is how it can integrate with our already existing tech. So sometimes some of the tech we use, actually, we almost don't interface with it. It will be all within Slack, for example. It's using, you know, another piece of software, like let's say Drift, like the messaging bot that I mentioned, but our own, like my team interaction with Drift is just another channel in Slack. So like, it's not a new app that way. So I think very conscious of that. Like, I mean, we all heard the studies of multitasking is not working, right? Like, you know, like that doesn't give the best results. So exactly, like trying to find, like not having like 20 different apps open. And that is why, for example, Text Expander, that's why we make this decision, because you could record in Gmail your script email. You could record in Drift your pre-written answer. You could, but each time, and then we change our pricing structures, then you have to update all these scripts in all these different apps. Chances are some are going to be missed. It's pretty high. So like this way, it's just like, okay, let's just go one level up, one, you know, bad analogy, but one app to rule them all on that level. Like we just change that one script and it will deploy, you know, wherever we're using it. We're not perfect.
I think it's a very interesting topic because we tend, us coding guys, I think we tend to forget that technology is, I wouldn't say natural to us, right? And especially, I think I'm looking at Jonathan, I'm looking at David here. We're all getting old, right? We've got the kids coming around pushing us with the new technologies and the new things. But this being said, we are definitely comfortable with technology. And I think the interesting thing to keep in mind is that not everyone is. For us, like you mentioned, Asana, 12 months ago, we actually shift away from Asana into ClickUp, right? Because we had, cost-wise, we do the same thing as you. So every 6 months, every 6 to 12 months, we review different apps, who's got access to what.
I would love to hear, because literally we studied 6 months ago, should we switch to ClickUp? Like it was just like, oh, like it was just like, would it been involved? And it was just like, okay, like when not, so it's definitely ClickUp. Every 6 months I ask myself the question in which, like, it's, so it's always in flux. I don't think you can say like one tech solution is going to be forever the right one. Like, I mean, I remember just a personal experience, but like when we started Oushinery, we started with Hubspot and negotiated a startup price. But then, you know, when I was just like, that doesn't work. Like, it's just like, you know, like pull out. So I think it's
same thing, exactly the same thing with us on HubSpot. It was great, but then the price just escalated, and we're like
and escalated, like insane escalation. It's just like, and the close, I mean, it had other issues, but I think it's something that I really want to point out. Like, you can make wrong choices with your tech in a way, but they may have been right at the time you made them. And that's, you know, like also we're not privy, is that how you say it, privy of this tech company's roadmap. Like they are themselves developing, building, doing new thing.
One tech, I'm going to jump in. One piece of tech that we use and we've used for years in different companies and different endeavors that I think is essential to anyone running a business that's got more than one person. Even if you only got one person, it's essential. It's not wine-centric. It's not startup. It's not tech-centric. It's a piece of technology called 1Password. There are a few alternatives. LastPass I know of. We ditched LastPass and we started using 1Password about 2 or 3 years ago. But the idea here is that this is an encrypted vault for passwords to be stored in, for logins, for credentials to be stored in. We add all of the credit card details that we use. We add expiry of licenses. And 1Password, the beauty of it is that they also have obviously different apps, right? So you're on your phone, you have access to all of your passwords. You're on your tablet, you're on the computer, you've got access to all of that, but you can also share those passwords. And that's where it becomes quite crucial, I think. From my perspective, look, I've been in tech for the last 25 years, and I cringe when I see a password in plain text in a public channel. Oh, that's the login, that's the password we use. And I pretty much have a rule where we do not exchange password in clear text internally, because we have that technology allowing us to grant access and share passwords. And likewise, as you mentioned, Laurie, when you've got someone leaving, well, you can just cut them off, right? And that's where it becomes, as a business, look, I think it's $5 a month per user. I don't know how much it costs, but it's definitely worth the investment. Everyone should have it. Yeah. Bottlebooks, have you got 1Password or have you got LastPass? Have you got a spreadsheet?
We don't have passwords because all the software has individual user accounts on there. So basically, when somebody joins the team or leaves the team, then we're basically just adding in a user account to there. So it's not like 1Password for everybody, but rather it's each user has their own account on all of our software. So I don't think we have any shared passwords that we're trading around.
It's going to change your life.
Well,
I do. Yeah.
LastPass. Yeah, we use LastPass.
Until you're using LastPass, until I get really fucking tired of it and I'm going to push you out of it. Because once you try 1Password, there's no turning back.
Absolutely. Like LastPass, I love what it does, but like the user experience of Vault and everything, I'm not sold. But most of the time, like you said, I'm on my phone, I need to access, and I just unlock LastPass with my thumbprint, and I can access it does a job, especially when I don't see it. As soon as I need to do like more things with it, it's definitely a bit cumbersome.
Yeah, their back-end UI is an absolute
terrible.
Pain. Another technology I'm curious to hear you guys about with regards to small producers, right? The concept of live chat has evolved quite a bit in the last 2 or 3 years. Laurie, you mentioned using Drift. We use Intercom. We've used different platforms at different stages. The big question I have is not really on the tech front, but what do you guys think as to whether it would be beneficial or more hurtful to a brand in having a live chat widget on their website, but the live chat not being live? The live chat being a form, or the live chat being we'll get back to you in 48 hours or whatever. Is that beneficial to a small winery?
Well, I mean, we use Drift. I know Drift is not necessarily like the best for consumer brand, like maybe like more B2B. And full disclosure, because we've been super long-term clients, we're grandfathered. We have it at a very, very good price. But what Drift does, so is you set office hours in Drift. So when that's open and when there is like when they see like one of my team like kind of online, then it is a live chat. Otherwise, it's by default not claiming to be live. It's like, hey, I'm the Oushinery bot. Can I help you? And it's plugged into your like the help section. So it goes find the answer on its own. It, you know, suggests like to book like a call with me, maybe for 20 minutes if you have like other questions, especially if that person has come like maybe twice to the website or things like that. So for us, our channel, like we use it a lot live, but like as soon as it's not live, for example, even when like you know, my teammate is away on like a long lunch break or whatever like that, then it kind of reverts to a bot. Like it's just like, hey, like so I think being transparent with that, I think there's nothing worse than a fake life, and I think people can call it out as well. So hopefully the technology can, you know, like the app you're using should pick up on that.
Look, I was talking to Winery just last week about it, and the idea is that, I mean, most producers we deal with have got less than half a dozen employees, right? And so they don't have like the concept of business hours. They don't have someone to come in and just sit 9 to 5 and answer questions.
So, and that goes back to my point of like trying to integrate it. You know, maybe that team uses Slack, or maybe they uses, you know, SMS or something like that. It's just like, how do you make it exactly not sit on that? But then if there is an alert, sometimes they also have like, you know, Chrome extension or something like that, so that it's notified. One thing that's also fascinating is, and I mean, I'm sure we're all guilty of that. When I use live chat constantly, I would use live chat anytime over like calling me on the phone, like anytime.
Everyone.
And is we are not patient of how long we're going to wait. Like the bigger companies, to tell you where you are in the queue, like, okay, position 2, position 23, you're like, okay, so I know I can wait. But like typically like systems that are just like smaller company, people expect an answer within like a minute to 3 minutes, and 3 minutes is already like, there's a lot of people like, you know, like leaving the page or something like that. So making sure that you have that system in place. So even though it's office hours and nobody is answering, because, you know, we are small teams and maybe either it didn't get noticed or you're already on the phone or anything, or in a Zoom call, we try to capture that email asking like, hey, like, what was your question? Let me get back to you. And we get an alert by email, but also via Slack, just like being transparent that way. And trying to make it just one. But for us,
it was essentially
like, a lot
that's
of
pretty much what we. Oh, sorry.
I said like a lot of
having some internet challenge. Is it me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Bloody computers.
I was just saying, like for us, like it's incredible, like how much we interact on the chat, and that's also probably because on purpose we don't really put our own phone number. Obviously, we have a toll-free number, but we try to keep that a bit more, you know, behind the curtain, because it's always easier to answer by, you know, live chat than on the phone, like more efficient as well.
100%.
Jonathan, what technology have you been into recently? Are you excited about?
Well, I think if we're also just referring back to the foundational technologies, it still amazes us how many physical Excel documents we are sent with information. And considering also that there is Office 365 that you could send a link with, or and then Google Docs has been around forever, but I think we focus on internally, we standardized on Google Docs just because it makes it super easy to collaborate internally, collaborate with any customer around the world, because pretty much everybody has a Google account at this point and can read and access the docs. And what also is cool about it is everything is versioned. So you make a mistake, you delete something, it's easy to get it back. So it's all these things that you just don't have with physical documents. With Excel, you hit that save button, and whatever you had before is gone, is toast. And then we've also, there's, you know, it's also really interesting to see how many different software programs integrate with Google Docs as well seamlessly, whether it's Slack, when we're enriching the content in one of our event directories, We actually have an integration. We didn't build it, but we are able to, there's a third-party plugin that we're able to suck in data from any Google Docs. So if you want to introduce data from another system, we don't have to do an expensive integration with that system. You can just update the Google Doc, and the next time you deploy the site, all that data is updated. So it's really, from a basic usage standpoint, basic collaboration, versioning, and even integrating as really a lightweight database into your projects. It's extremely versatile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about social media? Anybody found a great system, a great tech stack, or anything to manage, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything that does it all for you? Or
I know at Oushinery, we tried like later and a couple of, I'm right next to, located in Vancouver, Hootsuite headquarters are right down the street and everything. Tried those a couple of years ago and back and forth. And at the end of the day, right now we're all native. So that means that we don't use those apps that kind of like more trouble, like not more trouble, but not worth the it's not so much expenditure, but like the time and everything, and like the reward. It's not like Facebook and everything is not super transparent, but we felt like by scheduling like that way, we kind of get dinged on the how it gets then published in the feed. Like if you had like less reach we couldn't explain it. So long story short, right now we actually go on Facebook to do both Instagram and Facebook, go on Twitter, so we tried, and for us we don't use any. Sorry. What you said?
Pretty much the same, actually. And I think, look, it's probably a factor. It's not a technology factor. I think it's a business size factor.
Yeah.
We are all small technology businesses, same as like most wineries we deal with. Most of them produce less than 10,000 cases a year, right? A vast majority well below that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have a dedicated marketing and social team. And so we are doing the same thing, right? So we tried Buffer, we tried Hootsuite, and they're great tools, no doubt, but you need to have a full-blown social calendar and content planning, and you need to have the whole thing on a 3 months, 6 months ahead to really make the most value out of it. And same as you guys, so Troly is basically doing more or less everything native, everything by hand. We're going into different channels and we're posting here and there. And look, I'm ashamed to say, but as a technology company, we release features, we release code far more often than we release social media posts, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's interesting as well, because it's like the technology only does the technology, but it doesn't actually run itself in many cases. And so I think like that's something also we've struggled internally is to get in the habit of that. And so that's been actually dedicated focus to get a social media plan in place that we're maybe not posting, we're definitely not posting 5 times a day. We're rarely posting once a day, but making sure that we're at least out there once a week, because that in and of itself we feel is important, because how many times do you go to a company's site or to a company's Twitter feed and it just looks stale? And in the world of tech, people are wondering, okay, I bumped into you 3 years ago, and I want to see what's going on. And they go to your social, and they either see, like things that you're posting every week. It doesn't have to be a flood of information, but to just see that you are posting updates and that you're out there. It's really important to keeping those relationships and even if it's just.
Or to keep, I think you hint at it. I mean, it's a bit shallow, but to even also keep appearances, right? Like exactly, like some things that hasn't been active, you know, maybe even like a LinkedIn, you know, professional like business page is like, wow, like you created it and your last update is like 2 years ago. Like it just is like a bit odd, you know. One thing as well, like wanted to point out is, you know, the different, when we say social media, like for from us at Oushinery, what we mean mostly is like Facebook, Instagram, a little bit Twitter and LinkedIn, which may not work like for producers, but like as a, you know, professional service works pretty great for us. And those platforms, where they're all considered social media, they kind of have different tone and feel. They have different capabilities as well, and like in terms of like tagging and everything. So I found as well sometimes like you get more inspiration and get more on point when you are actually in the app natively, rather than like, let's try to write something that can then just be like bombarded the same across other channels. Like technically you think again efficiency, but you actually like don't do anything. And recently at Oushinery, like we kind of switched a little bit. We used to have more of a social media plan with like a really more dedicated social media person. And I don't know if it's a fact of, you know, Facebook and not, or Meta, whatever you want to call them. You know, we kind of switched a little bit, and now we really have social media more like as a expansion of our regular like marketing release plan. So let's say we do like a new feature or a new workshop, it's always built into Asana, project management, that we will amplify with social media. We will amplify, but it's kind of like coming that way versus like, let's go social media first and then deploy. So just like something that we're experimenting with. It's always never fixed, maybe technology or social media.
We touched upon Hubspot, which is a way where you can keep your customer data, so your best customers. What are you guys using as a customer management system?
So for us, Oushinery, ActiveCampaign combined with Airtable. Don't be so surprised then. Like you're mute, but like no people.
Interesting. No, because you mentioned Asana and ClickUp earlier on, and we switched across to ClickUp for primarily, I mean, there's a number of different features that we were lacking in Asana, and a number of features in Asana which just weren't user-friendly at all. But also Airtable is something that we looked into, and we found that ClickUp was a good mixture of Asana and Airtable together. But look, we do use, so we use a mixture of different things, and all of our systems are connected, but we effectively use ActiveCampaign as well for all marketing and account tracking purposes. As much, look, it's not, we talked about HubSpot, we tried different CRM. I think ActiveCampaign is far from being the best out there. But technically speaking, it's pretty fucking capable when it works.
Yep.
Even though that's the one challenge. And we also use Intercom. So Intercom for documentation and chatting kind of, and ticketing and support, all that kind of stuff. That's integrated with ActiveCampaign and also integrated with our backend Troly platform altogether. So there's data being shared all the way across. And we also have a link, excuse me. Not enough coffee. We also have a link back into GitHub. So in terms of managing issues or issues raised or new features requested, all of that is stored in GitHub. So we don't really have customer data, but we have a link between GitHub and Intercom and ActiveCampaign. So when someone requests a feature, we're then capable of notifying them that this feature has now been released when they've requested it. All kind of integrated with GitHub, which is coding, which is geeky kind of a shit. But the idea is that when there's a line of code that gets committed as being final, it gets reviewed, it gets released, it goes into a testing plan, and automatically that information feeds back into ActiveCampaign Intercom.
Wow.
Not perfect as an overall setup, but it's definitely working. Yeah. But there's no, look, I'm ashamed to say there's no perfect CRM from everything we looked at. HubSpot has got great marketing, but their underlying technology was not even more impressive than others.
And the cost
yeah.
is crazy.
And look, Intercom is the same, right? Intercom has a startup plan, which as a small business, you get access to, and it's like $65 a month or whatever. And 12 months later, it's $1,300 a month. Same as HubSpot, right? You're starting at like $50 a month, and like it's $2,000 a month. The 12 months later.
Yeah.
Look, you need to have a serious churn, a serious throughput, a serious amount of cash going through in order to have 5 or 6 of those, $2,000 to $3,000 a month expenses.
Well, and some of these they still offer free plans, so we still use HubSpot and we pay nothing for it because depending on what you're using it for, it's a great sales collaboration tool between different people because unlike your email, which is all isolated to different people, because it's integrated with our Gmail, all of our we use it to basically to organize our conversations according to customer. So if there's multiple people working with that customer, even if it's in different teams, we're able to go in there and see all those conversations in one place. And so we're using it more as an organization tool as opposed to like the full-blown thing. But for us, that's already a big step forward than just having all of the customer contacts locked up in emails. And it also is great for when there are rotations through the team that you're decommissioning somebody's email account, but HubSpot still has a record of what was sent without you having to go and maintain different things. So from that sort of organization perspective, we still find it valuable. But to pay the full rate after it expires after a year, it's like it's their price ranges are obviously set for the Fortune 500.
Yeah, and look, I'm looking at it in a sense where, like Intercom, right? Intercom has been heavily funded in the last few years. It's a massive product. They're charging $65 for startup, and then $1,300 and something 12 months later as a minimum, right? And yet there's a bunch of features which have been there since day one, and I'm sorry, they're not working. They still have to go back to their team, and then a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, okay, yeah, we fixed it. And I'm like, how could you pay $1,400 a month and then still have these kind of issues? Oh my God. No comments. I should have been a psychologist instead of a technology specialist.
Maybe we just talk about, sorry, Laurie, go ahead.
No, but it's important to, like what you say at the beginning again on like these plans. And I think we've all been guilty at, it's just like looking, okay, what does that mean in 12 months? Because there is a real cost, both time and money, to also switch tech. So personally, like I thought I was doing great. Again, budding entrepreneur, like HubSpot, negotiate the rate, great. And then I had this cost. One thing I would recommend though, especially all these apps that, what we call SaaS, is you can try to negotiate. Like I know for Drift, I understood the person, it was almost the end of their quarter, and I knew he wanted to meet his quota. And it's just like, what price can you give me per month? And so we got a special price at the time, and now Drift has expanded, and we are like paying like I think a third of what would it be right now, because I was already got a discount, but then they never changed it. So keep in mind that sometimes a slightly smaller discount on something that repeats monthly, way better than a 1 year and then it just goes nuts on the price. Like it's basic math, but it's worth looking at that because it's really, it makes a lot of difference.
Jonathan, how much time do you spend thinking about these topics, managing these topics? What is it, does it really make a difference? Is it important? What do you think about the overall management and thinking about trying to get a handle on these?
I think tech is obviously moving forward extremely quickly. I think we have not changed our tools at Bottlebooks so often since we started. So like the transition, like we've only, for a collaboration tool, we've only made one transition, and that was from Skype to Slack 2 or 3 years ago. And I mean, that was there were, it sounds simple, but there were some getting used to in just the way that it works, and it was enough of a culture change at the time. Now it works, and we're not sending emails internally, which I think is the biggest thing, and does integrate with the different software. So I think we don't spend a lot of time looking elsewhere because it works. It does what we need it to do, and there's other topics that we prioritize that we prioritize looking at. And I would say that's with a lot of the technologies. We might hold on to that perhaps longer. There might be a better technology out there, but the technology that we chose originally might still be fulfilling the original objectives. And if it's not strategic, if it's not going to like double what we're doing or 10x what we're doing, then, as you said, Laurie, there is a changeover cost, and you do have to rethink things. You do have to rekey things. You do have to retrain and move your habits over there. And there is an investment you have to make when you're going to move.
Can I share something? When we were like on the Zoom call, I literally went into we keep in Airtable like a tech stack tab. So I just checked. Since the beginning of Oushinery, we used 81 different tech services. And when it's going with all the way to WordPress plugins, so like we're like with tech things that just requires you to log in and sometime pay. Not all of them you pay for. So 81, and right now the one that we have active. So I'm also make sure that people are responsible. We have 58 right now that are active, and for each of these 58, we have like a short description of what this. Okay, so Smush, for example, which I'm not the one responsible. Smush is an image optimization, compression, and CDN, and it includes Hummingbird Pro, and it's actually Luke that is responsible overall for that app on the team. But like me as a business owner, I'm like, okay, and this right now costs us $0. And then we have, like other ones and things like that, more like Active Campaign. This cost us a few grand a year. But like, it's just like really interesting to just have that visible. And 58, I'm looking at this now, it's like, still is a lot, right? Like, it's just like quite a bit. Not all of them are paid, but one thing that I'm really like to do with my team is empower them for each of these 58, even though they're all accessible through LastPass, like, if we want to. Like the person, more often than not, that initiated, that first set it up, if they're still in the team, they are the one responsible for making sure this is still like, useful and things like that. And they're the one responsible for that tech app. And then, like I said, every 6 months kind of review is just like, okay, do we still need that? We are soon to retire our WordPress website, and I can right away see, okay, this 8 plugins, gotta go make sure we stop the subscription when that's the case, like just like all of that. And then just not to go like over the top, like at all of this app, we also use the app we use math to see if it's related to customer acquisition cost. So some app, like they use like different things. So like this, it helps us like, okay, how much money do we spend beyond just counting paid ads? Like you need all this other app to manage. How much does it cost us to get one new paid customer that way? So that's more like on the data part. But again, all this tech are not free. And so you have to make sure that you count them. Like they have to do something for you, maybe time, return on investment. And that would be something I would encourage people to think about when adopting.
Seb, a lot of small wineries come to you, and I'm sure a few of them have some tech anxiety. And for those 2 listeners who have tech anxiety and who have made it to this far in the podcast, what is your advice for them of how to manage 58 or whatever, but even to manage 5 different services or whatever?
And on top of which, that they also have to manage their tech their accounting, their marketing strategy, their branding and their product placement. They have to manage everything, right? So I think tech anxiety is an understatement. Let's put it this way. I'm a technology kind of a guy. I've always, same as Jonathan, right? I'm really proning really hard. At least try it. Just don't say no up front, at least try it. And one strategy that has worked quite well with a few wineries that I got really close with over the years is to try and allocate time, right? So as a small business, a lot of them are just running, trying to keep operating, right? They're not, strategically speaking, they're not spending a whole lot of time on thinking about the business. They're spending most of their time running the business. And one of the strategy, and I use that myself to manage my time, it's really to try and have time slots during the week where I'm going to try really, 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 really hard to focus on something that is not operational. So from my perspective, okay, don't tell anyone, but on the Saturday afternoon, that's my slot where I muck around with a piece of software that I want to just check out, right? I want to play around. I want to install and uninstall it. So I've suggested to a few wineries, try and just put like 2 hours on the Wednesday morning from 10 to 12. You know, it's a bit more quiet, and put that in terms of you're not doing accounting, you're not doing customer support, you're not shipping orders, you're not doing anything else, but try and have a bit of a play with a new piece of tech and see what you could get out of it. Because as a business owner, quite often you open up a new app and you quickly start realizing, oh, I could do this with that. Oh, I could do that with this. And that's allowed a lot of those wineries to stay up front with regards to technologies, because anyone falling behind today is okay, just barely kind of keeping by.
Yeah. And I would suggest as well in these 2 hours as well that you can dedicate is try your own website. I think we're all guilty of that. And even as a winery, it's just like, when was the last time you went on your website and tried to place an order? I think that's also like some things that just a bit fascinating that way too. Or just it's not technology, but one thing I would recommend as well, like for us, we shared a Dropbox folder that we call like swipe files, and we take screen captures. It can be anyone on the team. We just have it as a shortcut, like, oh, this was a cool email, or I like this feature or something, and we just, we don't want this to interrupt the day, but I just kind of like put it away, and it's easy to just store. But then then you have to make yourself time, like, hey, in the next 2 hours, I'm going to look, what was added to that folder and see what we can maybe like borrow, get inspired, like everything. It's very easy to use Evernote and clip an article and then never actually read it, right? Like, it's like the technology do its part, but like you still have as a human consciously decide, okay, what do you do with it? How do you
and I also have the same thing with regards to, so I have a technology time slot and I have a reading time slot. I think it's important, especially us as technology companies, and wineries kind of want to know what's happening in the industry. We get too many newsletters, we get too many pop-ups, too many of that, but it's important to take 1-2 hours a week and set that aside towards education, news, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the industry, what's happening with technology. Same thing.
Jonathan, last word to you. Is there a tip that you do? Is there something? Do you take a break? Do you find something really works well with you?
Feed the kids.
Feed the kids.
I would just build on top of what Seb said, is go out and have fun experimenting. It's technology also. It's not just about the nuts and the bolts of the business, but it should also be fun, and just to play around with stuff. And I think now is one of the best times ever to have a business and to be able to go out and have all these tools at your fingertips, 58 different softwares. 10 years ago, Like, you know, you just, the variety wasn't, I mean, even with a tech oriented economy, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had 58 tools out there. And I think there is something out there for everyone, and you're not going to know if you don't try.
Yeah.
And I would definitely argue, as small businesses, so we deal mostly with small businesses, right? Ultimately, there is an edge in being able to say, okay, we've updated our website, and it took, the weekend, it took a day. We want, as a business owner, I wanted a new chat, poof, it's live. There's an edge in using and adopting technology that larger brands don't have. Right, so it takes a whole lot longer for Constellation to adopt a new piece of software and use it at large, whereas a small winery at the top of Oregon can roll out a new piece of tech for their consumer or to help their business immediately.
And I think just maybe my parting thought is, the right tech for you is an enabler, like a positive enabler. Like I think if you also sometimes change a little bit the mindset, not, like of that technology allows this, that technology allows me to do three chats with customers to help them with their order versus 3 phone calls that would have taken me like 1.5 hours and 3 voicemails to get through. Like the creative, like I think there's, I don't know, maybe it's like my naivete or like my approach to life in general, but like it's just, done right, it actually can give you like a bounce of energy and creativity. And again, cut down on this busyness that I mentioned earlier, like, because that's soul crushing, that takes time, but for no reason, like when it's not necessary. So then you can actually free the time to do things that matter, or at least more rewarding as well. I think it's, like team-wise, like avoid, technology done well can avoid team, not even burnout, but even like turnover or things like that, right? Which has a cost a lot as well. Yeah.
Well, that was episode 24 of the Wine Tech Insiders podcast, the technology we use to run our companies. I'd like to thank our insiders again, Jonathan from Bottlebooks, Laurie from Oushinery, and Seb from Troly. See you all again in a few weeks.
See you guys. Have a good week. Ciao.